And we're live. Welcome back to today's National Weather Forecast. We've got two big stories to talk about today, so I'll try my best to fit it all in. The first one is this major snowstorm, actually two major snowstorms that are going to be coming through the northwest, bringing over 2 to 3 feet of snow, especially up towards the northern Cascades in Washington. So we're going to take a close dive into that, see when those two systems will be moving in, how much snow we're actually going to be getting. And then you just got a sneak peek of the other big story we're talking about. It's this back end of actually the system that's moving through the northwest right now, bringing some snow up to parts of Maine. The back end of that system is actually moving down into Texas. It's going to start to strengthen, and then it brings heavy rain throughout Texas, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and then it eventually works its way up all the way into the mid-Atlantic, bringing some snow to West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and then eventually to the Midwest and the Northeast. So it's those two different stories we have going on. The two big snowstorms moving through the Northwest, and then this system that is strengthening over Texas right about now, and then will be affecting the weather for the entire eastern half of the country over the next few days. So we've got a lot to talk about. If you're only interested in one of these regions or one of these stories, you can go down in the comments below where I put the timestamps for the different stories, so you could just click directly to the region you're interested in. And then also, I say this every day, but the weather forecast models change, as you're actually going to see today in a couple of the forecasts I'm going to be showing you, looking much different from yesterday. So that's why it's always good to actually check and make sure this is my most recent forecast, because especially when it comes to weather, it's good to stay updated with the most current information. So we'll get started here by just looking at the warnings map, and this is a good snapshot of where the key weather events are happening across the country. If you go to the eastern half of the country, you can see there's almost nothing going on. Very quiet time right now, but again, that's because that storm is strengthening over Texas right now. You can actually see the first little trace of it showing up down in Colorado as it moves south, and then that's going to be driving possibly some flooding, possibly some winter weather advisories towards the next few days. But again, quiet right now. Where we aren't quiet is up here in the northwest. We've got winter storm warnings, we have high wind warnings, and typically what happens when you mix those together is you actually end up getting some blizzard warnings. And I believe there are some in effect between Idaho and Montana here, because when you're dropping large amounts of snow, in this case it's over a foot of snow, and then you're mixing it with 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts, that reduces visibility and leads to what's called a blizzard warning. So lots going on in the northwest here. You can see those high wind warnings that were in Northern California and the Bay Area yesterday have now worked their way down into Southern California. Before they moved their way to SoCal, they actually knocked out my power here in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Good thing for generators, otherwise this forecast would not be happening. So as you can see though, the big action is going on in the Pacific Northwest, and this map tells the same story. This shows you Winter Storm Severity Index. I like this map because it just gives you a snapshot of how big a snowstorm's actually going to be. It's easy to call every snowstorm major, but this actually gives you an idea of how big it's actually going to be and what impacts are actually going to be felt. For example, the first part of this system that'll be going through Virginia into the Northeast, we're just expecting limited impacts with that. Couple of inches of snow at most. There are going to be some extreme winds, but overall that storm not looking too major. And you can see that's what this map is showing, just limited impacts. Where we have some major and even extreme impacts are where we get into the Pacific Northwest. That's where we have one snowstorm coming through right about now, and then we have another one following right in behind it. Those two things are going to add to over 2 to 3 feet of snow in Washington, 1 to 2 feet of snow in Oregon, and then just scraping the very tip of Northern California. There's also that bullseye in Idaho. The Rockies, I'm keeping my eye on the Rockies because that actually might be the top story. I'm kind of split between very northern Washington and this area right between Idaho and Montana. Both those locations seem like they're getting large amounts of snow and being mixed with those extreme wind gusts. So just clicking in here, you can see where these major and extreme impacts are expected through the entire middle of Washington and the higher elevations where we're getting all that snow, working their way into Oregon, and then northeastern Oregon and Idaho as well. So this actually looks different from what the map looked like yesterday, and that's because the second of the two snowstorms has actually strengthened. So now we're seeing major to extreme impacts stretching all the way down into Oregon, where yesterday we were just seeing moderate impacts. So we'll definitely take a good close look at those two snowstorms moving through there. Just taking a wide view of the precipitation we're expecting across the country, you can see that last little bit of that low that moved through the Midwest yesterday is dropping its final bits of snow on the northeast before moving off into the Atlantic. Then we have the first of the two major snowstorms starting to push into the northwest here, while that other system, the one that's actually connected to the one that just moved through the northeast, that one's starting to collect itself, bring in some moisture and some energy from the Gulf of Mexico, and then once that moisture gets fed into that system and that low starts to tighten up and strengthen, that's where we start to see some heavy rain going all the way from Texas into the Ohio Valley, and then eventually all the way up into the mid-Atlantic and the northeast. So that seems to be taking place right about now. We're seeing the first little effects of that light rain as the storm is starting to strengthen, and then that's going to last all the way until Saturday into Sunday. The northeast is feeling the final effects of that. And then behind those two systems, so that was the first snowstorm and that first little blast of heavy rain, behind that there's going to be a persistent pattern that just drops heavy rain over the entire southeast into the Ohio Valley and even the mid-Atlantic for a number of days. So it looks like we're actually going to be picking up even more rain with the overall pattern that's following this first storm that moves through. Again, this is a big change from what the models were showing yesterday. Now we're seeing large amounts of that heavy rain continuing all the way into Monday, Tuesday, even into midweek next week. The southeast is still getting heavy rain. And then while that's happening, that second system moves through the northwest. We get that heavy snow up in the northern Cascades in Washington again. So these two big stories are what we're following throughout the day today. Good idea to just get a snapshot of where that precipitation is going to fall. This is mostly helpful for looking at the rainfall. As I click through here, that's the first part of this system. Stretching from Texas into West Virginia, we're getting possibly up to 4 inches of rain in spots in Arkansas, Mississippi, and Tennessee. And then as that second pattern moves in and just settles over the region, that's where the rainfall really starts to pile up across the southeast. That's where we have this strip from Texas all the way into West Virginia. Yeah, all the way into West Virginia, where we have rainfall totals over 6 to 7 inches by next Tuesday. So that's the combination of that first system that gives you a little taste of what's to come, and then the overall pattern is just going to continue to drop that heavy rainfall from Texas into the Ohio Valley. And then if we want to look at the snowfall map, you can see there is some snow dropping in the northeast. That's the first part. Believe it or not, these two systems are connected. That's actually the very back end of the trough that's bringing the snow to the northeast right now. You'll be able to see that better in a forecast map I'll show you in a few minutes. So let's watch this. That's as that first system has moved into the northwest. We're already piling up over 2 feet of snow in Washington. And then right here, if I back it up, you can see how this works. The first system moves down into Colorado right about here. It's collecting, bringing some moisture in from the Gulf of Mexico, and then you're going to see it come back up. It's almost like a U shape where it dips down, kind of refuels its moisture tank, and then moves through the southeast, bringing heavy rain, and then you see a little bit of snow pop up between North Carolina, Virginia, and West Virginia before moving into the northeast. Now again, the winter storm severity map was just showing limited impacts with that system, as it doesn't look like we're getting all that much snowfall. Maybe 1 to 3 inches throughout parts of North Carolina and Virginia. And that actually has changed since previous forecasts. Previous forecasts were showing 6 to 8 inches. And now it's looking like not as much. But again, if that's how much it's changed since last forecast, who's to say future forecasts don't change even more and we go right back to major snowfall? We'll just have to stay tuned. That's why it's fun to watch the weather forecast every single day. So then as we continue to click through here, you can see Midwest is going to be getting some of that snow as well, especially up in the upper peninsula of Michigan. And then when that second system comes through the Northwest, that's where our snowfall totals all the way through Washington and Oregon look to be over 2 feet, maybe even over 3 feet. We'll have to stay tuned with those. Now, another part of this story is what's going on with the extreme winds. The extreme winds that knocked my power out early this morning, you can see are now moving into Southern California. And then the extreme winds of 30 to 35 mile per hour wind gusts with that snow system moving through the Northwest, those are going to be moving off into the Atlantic. Then as that next system moves in, you'll see those extreme winds move into Washington and Oregon, where we have gusts of 50 to 55 miles per hour, and then you'll see those spread out throughout the rest of the country just like that first system did. Drops down into Texas, and then with that first storm system, we get those 50 mile per hour wind gusts up in the northeast on Sunday. So wind is certainly going to be a factor we're talking about for the next few days when it comes to our forecasts. That was everything that's going on in 3 to 5 days from now. If we want to look at the averages for 6 to 10 days out, when it comes to precipitation, looks like there's a good probability that after those first two systems move in, we're actually going to be switching to a dry pattern in the Northwest, and then that rain will persist over the southeast all the way up into the mid-Atlantic. Looks to be what's setting up in this forecast over the next 5 days. I could see this coming true unless we continue to just get storm after storm in the Northwest like it seems like we have over the last 2 weeks. Then, as you look at 8 to 14 days out, things get a little more complicated. We start to get more precipitation, where we are currently getting it right now up in Washington and Oregon, and then in the Midwest, and then the rest of the country is either average or even a little bit drier. So that's what could be in store in the long-range forecast, but again, long-range forecasts, take them with a grain of salt, so we'll just have to stay tuned when it comes to that. So this is where you're actually going to be able to see what I was talking about that storm system moving through the northeast right now. You see the little dip right here in the lines of constant pressure. That is actually connected to this other system. It started out, you can't click all the way back, but it started out just as one big trough. Half of it moved through the Midwest and Northeast, bringing some snowfall there yesterday and today. And then the other half is going to dip all the way down into Texas, grab some Gulf of Mexico moisture, and then move right up through Arkansas, through Tennessee, Kentucky, bringing heavy rainfall there, over 3 to 5 inches of rain, before moving into the Midwest and the Northeast. So that's the first system right there. Now, the next system, if we click back, that's the first snowstorm that comes into the Northwest right here. And then watch as that fills into the country. It has a pattern that you're going to see sticking around for a number of days. And while this pattern persists, we're just going to continue to have heavy rain all the way from Texas up into the mid-Atlantic, right along this boundary where you see those isobars getting closer together. That typically tells you where the storm's going to be a bit stronger. And then also on the right side of a trough is typically where the more severe weather happens. So we've got that going on. That's the pattern that's driving all that heavy rain for the southeast into the Ohio Valley after that first system has moved through. Then you'll notice that second snowstorm that moves through the Northwest right there, set to come in Sunday night into Monday. And then you did just get one little snapshot of something we've been following just kind of for fun all week, is what's going to happen to this trough right here if this little low is in fact going to break off. This is something that seems to be changing in the weather models every day, but if that does break off, then there's a chance of getting some rain and snow in Southern California, which would be very nice because we're still in extreme drought, and it's been quite some time since we got a good storm system down there. As of right now, looks like it's getting closer than at least yesterday's model showed, but I don't think it's going to be close enough to really bring that rain and snow in yet. We'll have to see when we look at the precipitation localized forecast for that area. So what's going on in the overall pattern is also what's driving our temperatures. So if we click back here, this is a good snapshot of the overall pattern that's going to be filling in the next few days and driving our weather through this next weekend. And that has an effect on the temperatures as well. Where you have that trough, you can actually kind of see it. That's bringing down that cold air and those cold temperatures from Canada. Where you have this ridge, this warm Gulf of Mexico air and moisture is being lifted up all the way into the Ohio Valley. So that is a good snapshot of what kind of temperatures we're expecting over the next few days. And that's a pattern that seems to be, there's little exceptions here and there, but for the most part, that seems to be the theme. We're cold up here in the northwest, where we have those two systems moving in, actually below average temperatures, and at some points, even well below average temperatures, possibly getting 20 to 30 degrees below average. I know, especially in Montana, you've had enough of the cold with that last Arctic blast that came through. It looks like there's another blast of cold air, but the silver lining is it doesn't look nearly as bad as that last one. The last one was 50 degrees below average. This one looks more to be 10 to 20 degree below average range. And then the entire eastern half of the country you can see is well above average. And that's encouraging to see because I'm sure there's still large areas of Texas that are without power. So it's nice to know you're not going to need your heaters as much as you did last week when we had below zero and below freezing temperatures through much of Texas. So as I continue to click through here, this is Sunday as that trough has officially built in. It actually perfectly shows that right there. Once it's built in and it's strengthened, the two, I don't know if the word's dualities of what's going on across the country seem to have been strengthened. We get a little bit colder up here in the northwest where we have that trough digging down, and then we get a little bit warmer up here in the eastern half of the country where we're able to bring in some of that warm Gulf of Mexico air. So if we want to actually see the temperatures themselves, this is a pretty good snapshot of what's going on. When looking at this map, I know it's kind of hard to see the numbers themselves. So just think of if you see purple color, that's below zero. If you see blue and white, that's below freezing, so below 32 degrees. Anything in the yellow to green, you're between 32 and the mid 40s. And then as you get into the reds, that's where you're into the 50s. Dark reds, you're into the 70s. So as we go through the day today, you can see this matches the temperature anomaly map pretty well. Where we're having those storm systems dig down, that's where we have these below freezing temperatures in large portions of the northwest. Getting into Wyoming and Colorado, looks like we're actually even below zero. And then down in the southeast, where we're funneling in that warm air into that first low pressure system and then the overall troughing pattern, that's where we're bringing in some 60 to even 70. And if you're lucky, you might even be able to see an 80 degree temperature somewhere in Florida as this pattern continues into this next weekend. Just a snapshot, cold in the northwest, looks to be about average in the Midwest and Northeast, and then actually quite above average in the Southeast. So that was what's going on in the next 3 to 5 days. To look at the snapshot of if this pattern is going to continue, looks like for the most part it will. Colder on the west coast, and then almost the entire eastern half of the country has those above average temperatures. If we look at 8 to 14 days out, seems like this system is here to stay. Cold from Washington, Oregon, California, and then above average temperatures, especially up in Minnesota and Wisconsin. And then the entire rest of the country looks to be above average as we start March and get into mid-March. So we'll have to keep our eye on that, but as of right now, that pattern in the system is looking pretty persistent. So just to wrap that all up, right now there's a lot of action going on in the northwest. The first of those snowstorms is coming in, so we're expecting over 3 feet of snow when you combine that one with the one that's following right behind it. You're also combining it with some extreme wind gusts, 45 to 60 mile per hour gusts moving through there. So the chance for some blizzards or blizzard warnings are definitely in effect, as when you mix heavy snow with extreme winds, that's where you reduce visibility. You can see those heavy winds or that high wind warning that knocked out my power this morning have now moved down into Southern California. And then right now, the entire eastern half of the country is looking pretty quiet, but it's the calm before the storm. The first little trace of this storm coming in is showing as a winter weather advisory in Colorado, but that system right there is dipping down into Texas. That's what's going to continue to strengthen and then move up and bring heavy rain from Texas to all the way up into the northeast for what appears to be the next 3 to 5 days. And that's where we get a strip of 6 to 7 inches of rainfall from Texas all the way up through Tennessee. So we're going to have to keep our eye on this map because it looks like nothing's going on right now, but we could have some flood concerns in the near future that we're certainly going to have to keep our eye on. So as we just saw on the warnings map, most of the action right now is going on in the Pacific Northwest, so I think that would be a good place to start. And the two snowstorms that are driving the major weather in the Northwest are later what's going to be driving all the weather that's happening on the eastern half of the country. So it's good to just focus there first because it's all connected. So again, you can see those winter storm warnings and high wind warnings, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, even stretching all the way into Montana and North Dakota. So if we want to see that on the precipitation map, that storm arrived early this morning. Even first little traces might have showed up late last night, and that's going to continue all the way throughout the day today, throughout the day Friday. We're continuing to pick up snow throughout the Cascades, spreading out throughout the west for Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, getting that snowfall as well. There's a brief period Saturday night into Sunday morning where it almost looks like it's going to clear up for a second, and then the next system moves in right behind that on Monday. That's going to bring some more heavy snow to the exact same places as that first storm. That heavy snow building into the northern Cascades of Washington and then stretching down into Oregon. And it looks like that one might work its way into California a little bit as well. You can see that actually better on this map as we click through here. 1 second, I gotta close the blind. I was getting blinded by the sun right there. Tells you what's going on in California. It is absolute sunshine and it almost feels like summer right now. Might be unfair to say for all the people getting 3 feet of snow and blizzard warnings right now, but moving on. Okay, so clicking through here, that's that first system, that trough that's bringing that heavy snow to the northwest currently right now. That's going to sit over the region for quite some time. There's really no period where it looks like we're continuing to get very extreme snowfall rates. It just seems like it's almost constant to moderate snowfall, but for a long period of time. So that's actually probably a good way to have it, because if you have all of that 3 feet of snow coming in at once, that's where your damages are going to be extreme. When you're able to just slowly pile it up, you can still have extreme impacts, but it's at least better than getting it all in 2 hours or something. So as we click through there, you see that first system move off, and then that's the little cutoff low we're going to be watching to see if that could bring a storm to Southern California. And then there's that second system. And watch, this one does appear to be dipping a bit farther south. So the first one, the majority of the action goes right through Washington and Oregon and then seems to skip California, except for maybe that cutoff low that we'll have to watch. The second one seems to dip more into Northern California, so we are expecting to get some more rain and snow in California with that one. Not expecting it to be a major storm though. And then that one moves off, and it looks like we might have a pattern moving in after that, as we saw on the climate outlook earlier, where we're actually going to shift to some dry weather. If you're in the Northwest and sick of all these storms, then that could be some good news, as it looks like this time next week, we have a major ridge building over the western half of the country, which will mean we won't have all these storms coming in one after the other. So, like I said, that system moved in this morning. We're getting heavy snowfall and moderate snowfall. We're not seeing any purples in here. That's where you're getting over 0.2 to 0.5 inches per hour. But it's moderate snowfall that continues for a long period of time. So that's what's allowing these totals to reach all the way over 2 to 3 feet. The other reason our totals are so good, or so large, depends on your outlook, is because there's another system filling in right behind it on Sunday, especially getting into Monday afternoon is when the bulk of that really comes in, getting heavy snowfall in the exact same places, but then even stretching farther south into California, Nevada, parts of Idaho, Utah, Colorado as well. So we got those two systems to look out for. Clicking through the total accumulated snowfall, right there, that looks like it's where we've stopped piling up with the first snowstorm. So this is a snapshot of what we're getting with that first system. Looks like in parts of Washington, we're already probably over 2 to 3 feet. And then down in Oregon, looks like we're 1 to 1.5 feet at that point. Looks like Idaho could be getting up to a foot with that first system as well. Then as the second system pushes through, we'll go all the way to this time next week. That's where those, in total, Washington's maybe picked up 3 to 4 feet of snow. Oregon is now into that 2 to 3 foot range, and then parts of Idaho getting into that 1.5 to 2 foot range as well. My two areas of concern, I would say one is through this strip right in Washington and Oregon where there's a large amount of snow, over 2 to 3 feet. And then my other concern is actually this bullseye in Idaho, because we're going to be mixing that 1.5, 2 feet of snow with some extreme wind gusts. So there's really two things going on there. And the wind gusts are actually going to be widespread as well. So maybe that's just a concern for everyone. With that first system, the one that's coming through right now, you can see those winds have shown up in Washington, 50 mile per hour wind gusts, which are going to be spreading out into Oregon and Idaho, all the way into Montana as well. Looks like this weekend is going to be windy in Oregon, where we have 55 to 65 mile per hour wind gusts. And those are going to be easing up. You see right there, that's where you almost think there's a break in the storm, but this is right before the second system comes in. Right there, Monday afternoon, Monday morning. This is ways off in the forecast, so the timing is still up for debate, but it looks like that's going to bring some extreme winds as well, 45 to 55 mile per hour wind gusts, and those will be spreading out into California as well. So we got those two systems bringing two different things. We've got the large amounts of snowfall, especially in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. And then we have the extreme wind gusts, again, especially in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. So if we want to take a local look, this is a good way to actually get the exact timing. Looks like that first system came into Washington 4 a.m. this morning, and then watch how long this heavy snowfall continues for Washington. Right there, that's actually where we're getting up to 0.2 to 0.5 inches per hour. 4 a.m. Friday, it looks to be the bulk of this storm right there. And then that one is going to continue to add on to those totals. And then you think there's a bit of a break as you get into Saturday night. And then by the time you're waking up Sunday, that break is already gone. That first little trace of snow and rain starts to ease in, just comes in light throughout the day Sunday. And then the bulk of the storm hits 4 a.m. on Monday. Looks like it shows up as some heavy rain along the coast and then moves into some heavy snowfall in especially the northern Cascades. That one doesn't appear to be sticking around as long. So out of the two, they actually have different characteristics. The first one seems like it's a large amount of snowfall, but it's spread out over a long period of time. The second one seems like it's a large amount of snowfall, but it happens in one big burst. So it's two different characteristics there, and part of the reason for that is that system seems to be dipping down farther into California than the first one did. So you're losing some of that energy instead of just dropping it all right over Washington. As we look at the snowfall, right there, that's with the first system, so that's where looks to be around 2 to 3 feet already in the northern Cascades. And then as we have that second system move in, that's where we might be getting up 3 to 4 feet in the northern Cascades, and then 2 to 3 feet stretching all the way down into Oregon as well. And then again, we got the wind gust to think about as well. That's going to be continuing throughout the day today. You see those 45 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts right where we're getting that heavy snowfall. Again, that can lead to some reduced visibility, some things to think about there, and why we most likely have that extreme impacts expected right in this region where we're combining that heavy snow with these extreme winds throughout the day today. And then it looks like they're continuing into early Friday. By Friday afternoon, they seem to be easing up a little bit for Washington, and then they'll significantly ease up by Saturday between the two systems. And then when the next one comes in, that's going to bring some 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts, especially down here in the southern parts of the state, just like the first one did, moving out east and south. So again, we're mixing those extreme winds. Where's a good snapshot? Probably right about there. That's a snapshot that shows those 50 mile per hour wind gusts throughout central Washington and this area in the northwest as well, mixing that with 2 to 3 feet of snow, which is why we have these extreme impacts expected, especially in this region. It actually almost perfectly coincides where you have the heavy snow stripping down through the Cascades of Washington and Oregon, and then northeastern Oregon, we saw some heavy snow there as well, and then in Idaho. That's where we had the combinations of that heavy snow and the extreme winds, so that's why we have major to extreme impacts expected there. So there's two things I want to point out when it comes to the Southwest and especially California. The first one, something that we've been kind of following for fun all week, especially because this far into the forecast, there's no guarantee what's going to happen, especially with this kind of phenomenon, because the models typically aren't the best at predicting this kind of thing. But we've been following this little cutoff, though, low that appears to be forming Sunday into Monday. So if you missed that, watch this trough right here. As we click through the weekend, there's a little cutoff low that breaks off. We've been watching to see if that's going to move its way into Southern California. The first model that I looked at that showed this behavior said it was going to come in. We were going to be picking up rain and snow throughout San Diego and Los Angeles. And then the next model had it just moving into Utah. And California was completely missing out. This model today looks like the low is a little bit closer to California than yesterday, but still not getting all the way there. So it looks like we're going to be missing out as of right now. But again, forecast models change, so we're just going to have to continue to watch that to see what ends up happening. I'm kind of rooting for it. I'm hoping that Southern California can get some good rain and snow. We're in extreme drought, and it's been a while since they had a good winter storm. Now, there is something going on for California. The second of the two systems, actually I'll back it up so you can see the first. Look at this first one that goes through the northwest. For the most part, it dodges California. The bulk of it skips right through Oregon and into Nevada, and California is just completely missed by it. With the second one, well, we'll see if we're missed by it, depending on what happens with this cutoff low. But then the second one appears to be dipping down a little bit farther into California. So Northern California, as of right now, coming into Monday and Tuesday, we should be expecting to get some rain and snow with that dip in the jet stream right there. And then that's going to continue off, or I shouldn't say dip in the jet stream, dip in the 500 millibar pressure heights. I was confused because I was looking at the jet stream and it was showing something earlier to that system. So let's click through here and see if we can identify when that low comes in and if we're getting any precipitation from it. I would say it's right about there. You see this snow coming in Saturday and Sunday, but it looks like it's just going into Nevada, Utah, Colorado. Doesn't look to be making its way into California yet. And again, that's where that cutoff low has the chance of bringing a storm to SoCal. We'll have to watch it. Then that second system, the one that does dip into California, looks to be coming in Monday afternoon into Tuesday morning and then lasting throughout early Tuesday morning. As you see that low as it dips through, you can actually see it right there on the map, should be bringing some light snow to the Sierras, possibly some light rain to the coast. Overall, I'd say that one does not look like a major system. It looks like it's going to be coming through relatively fast, and there's not much strength left because it already dropped 3 feet of snow in Washington. So something that is going on is the extreme winds, though. We do have these right now 50 to maybe even 60 mile per hour wind gusts that have now moved into Southern California. Again, those are the ones that knocked out my power this morning. Now you can see they're over Southern California. And then we have a bit of a clearing as we get into Friday, and then as that new system moves in, that's where these extreme winds are going to come back throughout the Sierras especially, and then working into SoCal as well. That's where we get back into 45 to 55 mile per hour wind gusts right there with that next system. And actually, I think that shows it better right there. So I think that, interesting. I think this right here is actually the traces of that cutoff low. Even though the precipitation isn't making its way into Southern California, the extreme winds appear like they would. And you think about a low, it's counterclockwise circulation, so this could lead to some Santa Ana winds. So we're going to have to keep our eye on if there's any downslope windstorms or possibly even a fire threat in Southern California. I don't want to alarm or ring the alarm bell too early, but it has been quite some time since we had any precipitation down there. It's relatively dry. And if this cutoff low comes right here, the winds would be in the direction to be going directly offshore, which means a Santa Ana wind event is possible. And right now it appears that is what's showing up, 55 mile per hour wind gusts on Sunday. So that's actually something I hadn't noticed before that we're going to have to keep our eye on. And then it clears up, and then that's the system that's actually going to be bringing some precipitation to California. Looks like it's going to bring some extreme winds as well, 55 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts up here in the Sierras. I'm going to have to check to see if there's any fire concern with that. I might regret saying this later, but just in case it's not actually true and I have to go back on my word, but I believe we've gotten enough rain and snow recently that our fuel moisture is looking pretty good, and this system might just help out with the drought instead of causing any kind of fire danger. I'd say in NorCal, we're looking pretty good, but stay tuned. I'll look into if that's actually true. Wow, a couple gusts in here on Tuesday or Monday night into Tuesday morning that look like we could be getting up to hurricane force wind gusts in the Sierras, which will then be spreading out down into Southern California as well. Seems to be weakening by the time it gets down there because remember the trough just moves through NorCal and then moves off east. So if we want to actually see that precipitation move into Northern California, spending a long time on the west today, but that's just because there's a bunch of interesting things going on with it. So first little bit of coastal rain showing up maybe 4 a.m. Monday morning. Start to get some slight snow into Northern California throughout later Monday morning, and then into Monday afternoon, that's where that snow could work into the Sierras. So just clicking through that, as you can see, doesn't look like there's any periods where there's extreme rainfall or extreme snowfall. Just a little system moving through relatively fast. So I always like those storms. They give us some good rain and snow, helps out with the drought, but then it's not causing any flooding or extreme damages like that last big winter storm we had earlier this season. So again, I think the thing to watch there is what ends up happening with that cutoff low though, because that's going to be interesting, and I'm certainly rooting for Southern California to get a storm. But if we back this up, we can now move on to what's going on in the rest of the country. And I knew this was going to be a long forecast today, but I think I'll just have to go a little bit longer so that we can fit it all in. So what's going on in the eastern half of the country? There's two things actually, and it's connected to the same thing. It's all this part of this one big trough right here. And the first little blip or dip in these lines of constant pressure moved through the Midwest yesterday, brought some snow. Now that's moving through the Northeast, currently bringing some light snow there. And then that's going to be easing up by the time we get into, it actually might already be easing up. And then by the time we get into the afternoon, that one's gone. But then the next system is actually the back end of that trough. And you're going to see it. I'll click back just in case you missed it. So that little dip is bringing the light snow to the Northeast right now. The back end, watch it right here as we click through, and it dips down into Texas. That's going to bring in some moisture from the Gulf of Mexico and allow some heavy rain to happen from Texas all the way into the mid-Atlantic as that moves through over the next couple days. And then right behind that, we have this system moving in. And this actually is less of a system and more of just an overall pattern that appears to be sticking around for a number of days. So that first really shows up on Friday night and Saturday, and then that's going to persist for all the way into Sunday, all the way into Monday, maybe even to Tuesday as well. as that's going on, you can think about what's happening here. We're just continuing to funnel in moisture from the Gulf of Mexico into this low right here, and then right on the right side of a trough. This is a little science lesson right here. Right along the right side of a trough is typically where you have your severe weather, and when we look at the precipitation map, it appears that that is going to be true. When this pattern fills in like this, all the way from Saturday into Monday, looks like we're going to be getting heavy rain right on the right side of this trough. It has to do with positive vorticity, but that's a lesson for another day. So looking at the precipitation, there's that first little part of the system. That one's gone. It actually might even be gone already. What we're looking at is what's going on down here. We have the snow right here in Colorado and the rain down here in southern Texas. This is actually just a wide low pressure system just on it's the birth of this low pressure system. It's just trying to organize itself and strengthen. And how I explained this yesterday, you can think of it like a toilet bowl. At very first, the water is just spinning around on the very outside, and then as you continue to click through and that low tightens, or the water starts getting closer in together, that's where the storm strengthens, and then we start to get that heavy rain over Texas into Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama. As of right now, the warnings map doesn't show any flood concerns, but that's because this is a little ways off in the forecast and we'll have to keep our eye on it. So with that first one, it looks like that's that first little blip that goes through. If I want to show that again, that little system right there, go back to the beginning so you can see it. That is that little guy right there. So that moves through. So that's almost a taste of what's to come. Then you'll remember the overall system or pattern moves in, and then when that moves in, that heavy rain is going to continue all the way throughout the south into the Ohio Valley for a number of days, all the way into possibly even Monday, Tuesday, into Wednesday. Looks like we're still getting that heavy rain throughout this entire region because of that overall pattern. So if we want to zoom in to where this is first starting with that first little system, you can see it trying to collect itself right here. And then as that low starts to tighten up and strengthen, that's where we start to get the heavy rain. Looks to be hitting, you're going to start to feel some light rain throughout the day today. And then as we get into tonight and into early Friday morning, that's where the heavy rain starts coming in to Texas, Arkansas, Mississippi, and then moving up into the Ohio Valley. Now, you might be lulled into thinking the system's done, but remember that next one is filling in right behind it. When that happens, we're going to continue to get some heavy rain, again stretching from northeastern Texas through Arkansas, through Mississippi and Tennessee, and that looks to be sticking around for quite some time. And it even looks like Monday there's a chance of some snowfall in New Mexico and Texas. That can actually make sense. You think if this is a low pressure system right here, counterclockwise circulation, on the right side, we're pushing in all that moisture, which is creating all this heavy rainfall. And then on the left side, we'd actually be pulling some cold air down. So then when that mixes with the moisture, you can actually get some snowfall. We'll have to keep our eye on that. But I think the big part of this is what's going on with the rain. That's the first system that moves through. It looks like we are going to be getting 1 to 2 inches, possibly even 3 inches throughout northeastern Texas, going through Arkansas, Mississippi. And then as that overall pattern fills in, where we're getting heavier rain for a long period of time, that's where these rainfall totals really start to add up. That's where parts of northeastern Texas getting into 4 to 6 inches of rain, parts of Arkansas into Tennessee, I was seeing some 6 to possibly even 8 inches of rain values by this time next week. So there's really the two different stories. It's that first system and then the second one after it. One of the key spots where it looks like we're getting the largest amount of rain is right here in Arkansas. So let's zoom in here and see if we can see the timing of when those come in. Looks like the first little bit of rain starts 6 p.m. today, and then that strengthens by tonight into tomorrow morning is when we get the heavy rain with that first system. But remember, that one moves through fast, and then the next one moves in right after that. Looks like this overall pattern seems to be filling in 6 p.m. on Saturday. That's where we're getting heavy rain throughout much of Arkansas. And you'll notice this one sticks around longer. The first one, let's look at the exact timing. The first one, let's go back to the beginning, make sure we're at the beginning. First one looks like it shows up 6 p.m. Thursday. And then that one, for the most part, is gone by 6 p.m. Friday. So relatively quick moving system. The second pattern that moves in is 6 p.m. Saturday, and then you'll see this heavy rain continue for a number of days. Looks like that's where the last of it leaves. That's all the way getting into 12 p.m. on Tuesday. And then there might even be more heavy rain right behind that. So that's why that second pattern is going to be the one filling in so much rainfall. If you want to see that another way, there's that first little system. I shouldn't say little system. We're still getting maybe over 2 inches of rain, especially in southern Arkansas. But it looks little in comparison with the overall pattern that's filling in behind it. That's where by this time next week, that's where some places throughout southern and eastern Arkansas have added 6 to maybe even 8 inches of rain. And then northern parts of the state looks like you're in 1 to 3 inches by this next week. So there's a few things going on here. And I'm realizing now this is going to be a very long live stream today, but that's okay. More practice, and practice makes progress, I guess we'll say. So clicking through here, the first thing I want to point out is that first little system. You can actually see it down here in Texas, and this perfectly matches what we were talking about earlier, where there's the low, you have counterclockwise circulation. So right here, you're pushing in the warm temperatures, and you can see that based on the difference in color right here. You have those yellows pushing in, and you can see it's on the right side of the low. Think about that counterclockwise circulation. That's where you're pushing in that warm, moist air. You can actually see it on this map pushing in there. And then you can see on the left and top side, that's where you're bringing some of this cold air down. The winds flow into the low. So that does a couple of things. One, it pushes in moisture. And then where that moisture hits the colder air can't hold as much moisture, so then it falls as rainfall. And then the other thing it's doing is bringing down some of that cold air into Texas, where we saw there is a chance for some snow throughout New Mexico and very northern Texas here that we're going to have to keep our eye on. I'm not spending too much time on that today because I believe the heavy rainfall is actually the big part of the story. And then you can see as we continue to click through here, you'll start to notice this new system moving in. That's the low pressure system right there. And as that settles in over the region, you'll notice that that strip of where you're flowing in the warm air and moisture is, you can see it by its temperature or by the colors right here. It's easy to see by this yellow color that seems to be stretching all the way from Texas into Kentucky. And then down again on the northern parts of Texas, that's where you're bringing down the cold air. It's right along that collision right there. The collision of warm air pulling in and cold air pulling down, that we're getting all that heavy rain that seems to be lasting throughout this region, starting on, well, we'll look at the exact timing. I believe it's Sunday all the way through midweek. Might even be coming in Saturday through midweek, just bringing in that moisture and heavy rain. That's where we start to add up 6 to 8 inches of rainfall throughout that region. So taking a look back again, there's the first little system. That one moves up into the northeast. Then as that next low moves in, let's see when it starts because I just messed up the timing in that last slide. Looks like we might actually start getting some light rain 1 p.m. Sunday. And then watch how long this heavy rain sticks around for. All the way through Sunday, then into Monday, then into Tuesday, then into Wednesday even. We're still getting heavy rain. So that's why our totals throughout that region are going to be so large. So we'll just quickly look through this because we got a little snapshot of the key regions to look at here. With that first part of the system, we're getting heavy rain in northern Mississippi and Alabama, and then that one moves through just light rain behind it. With the second system, that's going to bring some heavy rain to Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee as well. Louisiana, you're getting some of that heavy rain, especially with the second system as well. And then it looks like we might have a low moving through on Tuesday. So that could be a key time to look out for because that's where we'd be funneling lots of moisture here and where we'd be getting heavy rainfall and some severe weather throughout Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. If we want to take a look at the total precipitation, we'll just click all the way through. What are we getting with both of those two systems combined? By this time next week, looks like northern parts of Louisiana 4 to 5 inches of rain. Looks like northern Mississippi and Alabama are going to be the key spots to look in this region. Keep our eye out for any flood warnings because that's about 5 to 6, even maybe 7 inches of rain right there. And then 4 to 5 inches filling into Georgia. So we'll have to keep our eye on this overall region to see if any of those flood warnings pop up. As of right now, not really any warnings for the entire eastern half of the country. Obviously, don't take my word on that. Check your local resources. But right now, not much showing up in the way of warnings. But we'll have to see if that good luck continues because it looks like there's a large amount of rainfall filling in. There was that first system. Again, that starts 6 p.m. Thursday throughout tonight into tomorrow afternoon, and then that one's gone. The next one moves in about 12 p.m. on Sunday, getting heavy rain, especially in northern Mississippi and Alabama, all the way through. So first comes in Sunday 12 p.m., and then lasts throughout the day Sunday, working into Monday, and then even into Tuesday and Wednesday as well. We're still getting that heavy rain. So clicking through the precipitation map again, with those two systems, you can see again, northern Mississippi and Alabama, those will be the regions I'm watching to see if any flood warnings pop up because it looks like there are some regions that could be getting 5 to 6 to maybe even 7 inches of rain with these two different systems. So backing up again, we'll just continue to follow this system and now we'll follow it up into the Ohio Valley. So I wanted to back up so we could see this again because there are two things going on. That first one right here, that's just going to bring some rain. We'll see if there's any snow. There's actually one region that's getting snow moving through right there. And then we have the next pattern filling in behind it, which is going to be, I think, the bigger of the two. You have the same kind of heavy rain with this, but it's lasting for a number of days. So that's where the rainfall really starts to add up. Seeing that another way, there's that system forming right now, and then it's going to move up through Tennessee and Kentucky, bring some heavy rain there before moving to the northeast. When the next system moves through, that's where we start to continue to get heavy rain through Tennessee and Kentucky, and that's going to last for quite some time, possibly even a number of days. So that's where our totals get into the 4 to 5 inch range. Taking a closer look at what we were just looking at, there's that first system going throughout. Looks like Friday, maybe even Thursday afternoon if you're in the southern parts. And then that heavy rain continues throughout the day Saturday. And then the new system shows up Saturday into Sunday. Heavy rain continues all the way into midweek next week. If we want to take a look at the precipitation totals, just with both those systems, by this time next week, there's the snapshot of where we're getting some heavy rainfall throughout the Ohio Valley. Looks like Tennessee, the bulk of it, 5 to maybe even 7 inches in some places. And then Kentucky, you're getting 4 to 5 inches within this next week with all that heavy rain. So again, there's two things going on. The first system is a quick mover. It's bringing some heavy rain, maybe an inch or two. When the second system just sits over this region for a number of days, that's where these rainfall totals really start to add up. And then there's actually something else going on with this. There's going to be some extreme winds with this as well. As we get into Saturday and Sunday, especially with that, when that first system pushes through, we have some wind gusts that are looking to be around 40 mile per hour wind gusts, maybe even a little bit more in select locations of Kentucky and Tennessee. And then as that overall pattern remains over the region, there are some periods on Monday where we look to be getting some wind gusts in the 30 to 45 mile per range as well. So we'll have to keep our eye out for those. So to take a local look, we can see when this first system moves through, looks like the first light rain coming in 6 a.m. on Friday. That heavy rain starts to build in throughout the day Friday, working into Saturday. And then for the most part, I would say that's when the first system's gone, 12 p.m. Saturday. This is actually when I'd say the new pattern is settling in over the region. We start to see that heavy rain in western parts of Tennessee, and then the real heavy rain starts building into Kentucky as we get into 12 a.m. on Sunday. And what you'll notice is the first system, after I clicked through a couple times, it seemed to be gone. With the second part, the heavy rain continues all the way into 6 a.m. Sunday. Now we're into 12 p.m. Sunday, 6 p.m. Sunday, Or did we just say 6 p.m. Sunday twice? That was 6 a.m. Sunday. And then 12 p.m. Sunday, 6 p.m. Sunday, still getting that heavy rain, especially throughout Tennessee. I think Tennessee might be the spot to watch. And then there's, again, a number of other little low pressure systems that seem to be bringing rain throughout this region. So just clicking through, that looks to be with the first system. Again, by any standards, this would alone be a major storm. Shouldn't maybe say major. It looks like the impacts aren't going to be all that extreme. But again, that's 1 to 3 inches of rain. That's certainly something to talk about. But it seems to be nothing in comparison to that overall pattern that's filling in behind it. That's where by this time next week, you can see especially Tennessee. That's where on that last map, that seemed to be the bullseye of where that heavy rain just continually was over this region. And it looks like by this time next week, there are some areas getting over 6 inches of rain. Parts of Kentucky in that 4 to 5 inch range as well. So again, no warnings yet, but we're going to have to keep our eye out because that's a lot of rain to be getting in a week. When that kind of thing happens, your soils get saturated, and it might get saturated in the first couple days. So then any rain that falls after that, it can't soak into the soil because the soil's already holding as much as it possibly can. So that's where we got to look out for the flood warning there. So there is some good news. I know I just said a bunch of things about extreme wind gusts, 40 to 45 miles per hour, and then possible flood threats because the soils are saturated and there's 6 to 7 inches of rain. There is some good news. It's at least not ice. And that might be grasping at straws, I think that's the saying, to get some kind of silver lining. But I would say that actually is a silver lining because it was only last week where it seemed like every single day I was giving a forecast on the next major ice storm where we're bringing in 1/2 inch to 1 inch of ice throughout Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, North Carolina. And I would say that obviously heavy rainfall and extreme winds aren't great, but I would say it's the lesser of two evils. And if I had to choose, I would certainly choose those over all that ice that we had last week. And this explains why that's happening. There's actually above average temperatures throughout much of this region when the storms are coming through. So you'll notice the cold temperatures start to dip down into Kentucky on Friday as this high brings them down in here. But when we're getting all that precipitation, as I click through here, majority of this region is in the 40s and the 50s, possibly even into the 60s at some points. So that's why in Tennessee and Kentucky, I'm not predicting any major ice storms there because it looks like we're above average temperatures for the most part, and that precipitation, instead of falling as ice, is just going to fall as heavy rain. Again, we'll have to look at any flood warnings, but I would take it compared to the below freezing temperatures and all that ice we had last week. Now, there is one thing you might have noticed on this map. There's a strip in West Virginia and Virginia that appears to be staying cold when in line and at the same time that precipitation is going to be falling. So that is actually one location where we are going to be seeing some snow. So we'll take a wide look again at the two systems we're following. The first one right there, that one moves up and through West Virginia and Virginia. And then behind that, we have just continued rainfall. And you'll notice it is continued rainfall. We might get a little bit of snow on next Wednesday, but for the most part, as I clicked through that, it was mostly rain throughout this entire region. Where we were possibly getting some snow matches this map right here, where right in that strip, going all the way from North Carolina through West Virginia and Virginia, that's where there's actually a possibility of some snowfall as we get into Friday night and early Saturday morning. That's where right in this area, the temperatures are actually cold enough to be picking up some snow. And one thing to note, where there's that boundary between below freezing and above freezing temperatures, that's where there is some possibility of some slight ice. I'm not spending too much time on that today because it's not even comparable to what we had last week. But again, that is something to think about throughout Friday night into early Saturday morning. Could be some ice building up on that boundary where you're right around 32 degrees. And then after that snow comes in, then after that, it seems like your temperatures just remain above average. You're relatively warm, above freezing. So the majority of your of your precipitation is rain all the way until early Wednesday morning, when we'll have to keep our eye on this. There's a chance for some snow, but that's way off in the forecast, so I guarantee that map right there will look much different by the time we get to it. So we'll just take a look at the precipitation that's coming through. We'll just click all the way through with both those systems. It looks like the majority of it was falling in Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee. As we get into West Virginia, North Carolina, in the next week, looks like we're picking up an inch or two of rain, so not nearly as severe weather as we were seeing stretching from Texas into Tennessee. But the one difference, or the other difference, you're getting less rain, but you're also getting the only snow that we see throughout this entire region. That right there looks to be stretching from West Virginia, North Carolina, and it's not as much as the original models were showing, but it's something. And it's not as much because that little strip of cold air seems to be much weaker than the original models were showing. Last time it looked like it was spread out a little bit farther and covering a much larger region for a larger period of time. So zooming in, that's obviously the key spot we got to dive into, because the rain's not as big of a factor, so we might as well talk about the snow that's coming in. Looks like it might first pop up 1 p.m. on Friday. Then at 7 p.m. on Friday, that's where you might get some slight ice. I'm not too worried about it because I maybe got used to all that crazy ice storms we had last week, but that is where you're getting some snow in West Virginia and Virginia around 7 p.m. on Friday, and then continuing into 1 a.m. on Saturday. Very last bit of snow, and then after that is when the rain just continues to fill in. Looks like right about there, 7 p.m. Sunday. Looks to be the only time when you're getting that heavy rain. Most of the heavy rain falling closer to where it's bringing in the moisture, closer to Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi. That's where the moisture is being funneled in from the Gulf of Mexico. So that's where it's also falling. And I'll show a graphic for that in a second. First, I just want to look at the total snowfall that we're going to be getting. Yeah, it's not much. So original forecast models, and this is again why you always have to check to make sure this is my most recent forecast. Original forecast models had this coming in as 6 to 8 inches of rain. I was a little hesitant because it was a ways off in the forecast, and I'm now looking back glad that I was hesitant, because now it looks like we're getting maybe an inch to 2 inches possibly in parts of North Carolina. So not as much, but it is something. And again, it's because of that one little strip of cold air that's coming down. So where that cold air is coming from, and it actually ties into the Midwest and the Northeast forecast as well, is actually from this high pressure system. You'll see this moving through, and you think about a high pressure system, it has clockwise rotation. It's the opposite of a low. So down on this right side, you're actually pulling down some cold air from Canada. So as that high moves through, it's going to bring the cold air with it as it moves through. So that's what's allowing that snowfall to fall in West Virginia and Virginia. But then you'll notice some of those cold temperatures stick around long enough to coincide with the precipitation that we're going to be getting in the very northern parts of the Midwest and Northeast. Or you might not be able to know that yet because I haven't showed those maps yet. But that's where we are going to be getting some slight snow in the very northern states of the Midwest and Northeast. But overall, you'll notice that after that high moves through, we do have that one little strip of the Northeast, large strip of the Northeast, that's the remaining below freezing. You can tell because it's that blue color. But throughout the region, you'll notice that for the most part, we're warm. We're in the 40s and 50s getting into Saturday. Into Sunday, it looks to be even warmer. And then getting into Sunday, that's where that second system has moved through. That's where we're funneling in all this moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. That's where we have all this heavy rain stripping from Texas all the way through Kentucky. But the other thing that's doing is it's bringing in all that warm air. So you can see almost the entire eastern half of the country as we get into this weekend and into the start of next week looks to be above freezing. So as we're getting all that precipitation, it's mostly going to be in the form of rain. Now, the exception to that is in the Midwest and the Northeast, the very northern parts of the state. And then there's one little strip. I'm not spending too much time on it because it's only an inch or two. But as that system, so just backing up, we'll just get the wide view, get a good idea of what's going on again. So that system forms right there. That's where it's bringing in some moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. That one's going to move up into the northeast, bring some snow to parts of Michigan and the upper peninsula of Michigan right there. And that's where we could get some slight snow in Pennsylvania and New York, because that coincides with where the high has brought in the cold air as well. That's what I was trying to say. So then as this next pattern overall over the region fills in, that's where majority of the eastern half of the country had those above average temperatures. That's where you look like this. You're in the 40s and 50s, possibly even the 60s. So that's why at this point, you're not getting snow up here in Ohio or Pennsylvania. You're getting some heavy rain. Now, again, where you're in the very northern parts of the Midwest and the Northeast, that's where you might be cold enough to be picking up some slight snowfall, but again, nothing major there. As we click through the Midwest, we did get some snowfall yesterday, just some light snowfall. Looks like the next little bit will be coming in Friday night to early Saturday morning with that first system. So then that one's going to move through fast, just getting maybe an inch or two, especially in the very northern states. And then as that overall pattern fills in, this is where the entire eastern half of the country is above average temperatures. Right there where we have this low, you think counterclockwise circulation around a low. It seems like as long as you know that, you can get a good idea of what's going on in the weather for most figures. So right here, counterclockwise circulation, think of that would be bringing in all that warm air and moisture where you see that rain falling in. But on the left side and the top side, that's where you would actually be bringing down cold air from Canada. So that's why we can get some snow in Wisconsin and then the upper peninsula of Michigan. So that's really the key spot to look at for any kind of snowfall. And there is actually one other change in the forecast. With that first system, it's actually changed where it's falling. Yesterday, this is showing what falls with that first system that comes through. Yesterday, it was mostly in northeastern Wisconsin and the upper peninsula of Michigan. Now it looks like most of that is going to be falling, what I would guess is some lake effect snow, where we get an inch to 2 inches down here in lower Michigan. But I would say the spot to focus on is still northeastern Wisconsin and the upper peninsula of Michigan, because that's where that second system that goes through, the one right there, that's where we're getting some heavier snowfall rates. So that's where the totals are going to be a little bit more. I say a little bit more because we're not dealing with that much snow. That's maybe 2 to 4 inches right there maximum in the upper peninsula of Michigan. So it's not a major snowstorm by any means, but certainly worth noting. So again, forecast models changed. That first system looks like it's now missing this region. Big change from what the models were showing yesterday. Where the snow does come in though, let's see if that right. So it looks like it almost comes in 2 little waves, that second blast. Let's see if we could see that on the wider map. So right there, that looks to be where we're getting the first part of the snow, and then that's where it fills in. So looking at that on the local map, that looks to be right around 1 a.m. on Saturday. And then, interesting. All right, what is going on here? All right, so 1 p.m. on Saturday. Okay, that is actually the first system right there. But again, that's mostly bringing snow to Michigan. It's hard because these maps jump between 6-hour time spans, so it's a little difficult to match them up perfectly from time to time. All you really need to know is with that first system, mostly down here in lower Michigan. We're interested in the second system, which, okay, getting my bearings here. Second part of the system, that's it right there. Okay, 7 a.m. Sunday. That's when the second system is moving through. 1 p.m. Sunday is where you see the low right there. That low is bringing down that cold air. That's where we have the bullseye of heavier snowfall rates in the upper peninsula of Michigan. And then that one's gone. So that only took about 5 minutes to say. So clicking through here, that's what I wanted to show. It showed some slight snow showing up in northeastern Wisconsin and upper peninsula of Michigan. That's why I was slightly confused. but it doesn't look like much. It looks like it's not even a half an inch in most of that region. And then that's mostly for the lower parts of Michigan. The second system, when it comes through, that's where we start to get some more snow. But again, not all that much, maybe 2 to 4 inches. I'll have to keep my eye on it because that's Sunday into Monday. So we'll have to see if that ends up coming true. It's a ways off in the forecast, and I always say the models aren't the best at judging the snowfall that far out, so we'll have to see how much that changes. As we have seen, especially with the West Virginia and Virginia snowfall forecast we were looking at earlier, went from 8 inches to about 2 inches. Okay, so now transitioning again, we're going to go to the Northeast now, and I know we're way over time for how long these usually are, but we're just going to keep going to try to fit it all in. So, 2 things going on in the Northeast, and it's all connected to the same thing. We have that little blip in or a little dip in the lines of constant pressure right there, moving through the Northeast early this morning, most likely gone by the time you're watching this video. That brought some light snow to the very northern states, but what we're interested in is actually on the back end of this system. The trough that digs down right here into Texas, keep an eye on it, then it's going to move up directly into the Midwest and Northeast. And at this point, it actually looks like a high pressure system that moves through right before this is going to bring down enough cold air that parts of Pennsylvania and New York will actually get some snow with that. Then after that, there's this pattern that fills in over the entire eastern half of the country, bringing heavy rain here, and then eventually we'll see if it can bring some snow to the Northeast. That's the question, because the temperatures are going to be above average for quite some time. So look at that low right there. That one is gone by this afternoon. No more snow there, and then that's where the high moves in, and that's going to be what's bringing down this cold air over this region. So the important thing for that is because since that high brings the cold air down, after this system has formed and brought in a lot of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, by the time it moves up, some of that cold air is still there, and we're actually able to bring some snow to Pennsylvania. I wanted to click back. Looks like New Jersey. I wanted to zero in on New Jersey. I guess we'll see that better in a second. But then looks like New Jersey's getting rain, and then New York looks like you're getting snowfall, and then some heavier snowfall as you get into the northern parts of the state. That's where it's actually able to start bringing in some moisture from the Atlantic as well. So clicking through again, there's that low this morning. That one's gone. There's the high moving through. That's going to bring in cold temperatures, which I'll show in a second. Those cold temperatures are going to allow that first bits of precipitation to fall in Pennsylvania as snow. Yeah, again, zeroed in, looks like New Jersey is mostly in rain. I was curious to see if they still had the cold air. Doesn't look like they do. But then that snow can fall in New York, where we do have that cold air, parts of Massachusetts. And then at this point, this is where it starts bringing in some moisture from the Atlantic. So as it brings in more moisture, that means there's more water available for precipitation. But the only parts at this point that have the very leftover effects of that cold air from the high are the very northern locations of New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. The rest of the Northeast at this point, all that cold air from the high is now gone. You're above average temperatures, so your precipitation at this point is rain. And then as we click through there, that one is gone. And then going through, just clicking through the start of next week, looks like we have, for the most part, clear skies, and then next Wednesday, we'll have to see if there's some snowfall coming through there. Not going to spend too much time on that because that's a ways off in the forecast. What I want to spend some time on is showing this high moving through. So right before it moves through, let's go back to early this morning. You can see majority of the Northeast either right on that freezing line or actually above freezing. Then you're going to see on the left side of the screen here, the high pressure system moves in. And when you think about it, there's clockwise circulation around a high. So on the right side here, it's pushing down all this cold air. That cold air is actually going to be able to settle in over the region. And then right about there is when your precipitation is going to be coming in. That's where you are actually able to get some snow in Pennsylvania and New York. And then you'll see those cold temperatures just creep farther back at the same time that precipitation's coming in. So it's almost like there's a race between the cold temperatures and the precipitation to see if you're going to get snow. At first, there's enough cold air to get that snow in Pennsylvania and New York, and then those cold temperatures start retreating up into Canada, and then it's at that point the only places in the Northeast getting any snow are the northern locations of New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, perfectly matching what this map shows for where those below freezing temperatures are. Again, easy way to see this map, the blue color is where you're below freezing, the green color is above freezing. So that perfectly shows that as we click through here and as the precipitation falls in, the cold temperatures will be retreating up to the north, so where you're getting snowfall will be retreating as well. If we want to see that snowfall come in, that's what fell early this morning, and then this is the next system that pushes through from the south. That brings maybe an inch or two to Pennsylvania, 2 to 4 inches to New York, and then as it continues to fill in as that cold air is retreating, that's where, again, the very northern portions of Maine, the area where you're actually able to stay in that cold air the longest, that's where you can actually get 6 to 8 inches of snow by this next Monday. So it's going to continue throughout the weekend. And then one other aspect of this is there's some extreme wind gusts that are associated with the storm as it moves through. So right there, it looks like that's afternoon on Saturday. That's where the storm's moving through, and we could have 45 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts that first move through New York and then work their way into Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, where, again, 50 mile per hour wind gusts is pretty significant as that system moves through. But I also just want to look at the exact timing. So it looks like by 1 p.m., the very last traces of snow in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. And we're focusing here because this is where that cold air stuck around the longest and where the snowfall totals were the greatest. So at 1 p.m. on Saturday, maybe even a little bit before that, is when this storm has officially moved in, and this looks to be the bulk of the storm widespread over northern New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. And then as we continue into 7 p.m. Saturday, that's where the only part of the Northeast that's still below freezing is this northern part of Maine. So that's where you're still getting some snowfall up there. After that, seems to be clearing. Might get a little more snow on Monday. Pretty inconsequential there. Not going to spend too much time on that. And then it looks like you're in the clear all the way until maybe this time next week. That's the next storm we'll have to keep our eye on as we go farther into the forecast. So that's what you got this morning. Another 2 to actually 5 inches fell in Maine this morning and into this afternoon. So that's something. And then you'll also have to keep in mind, we're going to have to add on this next system to what's already fallen on this map. So as we go in here, that's after this system has moved through by Monday into Tuesday. You can see parts of northern New York could get 6 inches total by this next Tuesday. Parts of Vermont, probably more in the 3 to 4 inch range. There's a couple bullseyes in New Hampshire where you could get 6 to 8 inches. And then Maine looks to be the bullseye of this storm because that's where the cold air sticks around the longest, where some locations could get up to a foot. But for the most part, I'd say we're in that 6 inch range. So that was a lot. That was the longest forecast I've ever done, about an hour and 20 minutes in, I think. And that's because we had a lot to cover. So I'll try to just do a quick summary now. That might be a daunting task, but it'll give a good explanation for why this was such a long video. So just a forecast summary. We have that one low moving through the northeast right now. That's brought 2 to 4 inches of snow to Maine. And then on the back end of that system, we're going to have this storm strengthening over Texas, bringing heavy rain to Texas, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky. About an inch or 2 inches of rain with that one. Then it's also going to bring an inch to maybe 4 inches of snow to West Virginia, parts of North Carolina, before that moves up into the northeast. Now, while all that's happening, we have the first big snowstorm moving through the northwest. This is perhaps the big story for the day. This is where we're getting over 2 to 3 feet of snow in Washington and Oregon, parts of Idaho getting over a foot to 2 feet of snow, mixed with 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts. So that's the key spot to focus on throughout the day today, and I believe tomorrow as well. That's where we've got some extreme to major impacts expected in this region, where we could have 3 feet of snow and 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts. So that first one moves through as that system is moving through the southeast and the northeast. Then what you're going to notice is that system that moved through the northwest and brought all that snow there, that's going to then settle in as an overall pattern over the eastern half of the country that's going to continue to drop heavy rain at the same time as above average temperatures to the entire eastern half of the country for throughout the weekend and into even midweek next week. All that heavy rain continues. I would say that is the big story for the eastern half of the country. All of that heavy rain that's going to be coming in this weekend into the start of next week, that's where some of our totals in Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, that's where some of our rainfall totals can get up to 6 to 7 inches. So we're going to have to keep our eye out for any flood concerns there. And then again, we had another system moving through the northwest, bringing even more snowfall to Washington and Oregon, but this time spreading some of that snow down into California and Nevada as well. And then when it comes to the temperatures, I could click through this map, but this actually is a pretty good summary of what's going on. Northwest, below average temperatures at some points in the forecast, possibly even 20 to 25 degrees below average. Eastern half of the country, above average temperatures, and in some cases 10 to 15 degrees above average. And especially when that second system moves in next week, let's go all the way into Sunday, this is where the entire eastern half of the country is well above average temperatures. So even though you're getting large amounts of precipitation, it's not going to be that snow or those crazy ice storms we had last week. It looks to be mostly falling in the form of rain, because you see Tennessee, Mississippi, Louisiana are all 20 degrees above average. At this point, the Northwest is about 20 to 25 degrees below average. So there's a clear split in between the middle of the country. Now, when it comes to the warnings, this paints a good picture of what's going on right now. We have those winter storm warnings in the Northwest, along with those high wind warnings, possibly creating some threat for a blizzard. That's where you're dropping a lot of snow, the wind is kicking it up, and that's where you reduce visibility, and there is actually a blizzard warning between Idaho and Montana, even though it's not showing up on this map. And then also the high winds that took out my power this morning have now moved into Southern California. But then on the eastern half of the country, it looks completely quiet. It looks like nothing is going on in the eastern half of the country. That is going to change. Overall, when we looked at the climatology outlook, it looks like the west is actually going to change to a drier pattern, and the eastern half of the country is going to change to a pattern showing more precipitation. And then especially as we get into the weekend and the start of next week, that's where we're going to have to keep our eye on some flood concerns there. But then just to reiterate one last time, key thing going on is the Pacific Northwest. I just wanted to show this to end the video because this is the most important factor. We have major to extreme impacts expected in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, where we're mixing over a foot, in some cases over 3 feet of snow with 50 to sometimes even 60 mile-per-hour wind gusts. So that is the key area where if you live in these locations, don't take my word for it. Check your local resources for all the most current information. So about an hour and a half later, I think that basically wraps up what's going on in the forecast today. Be sure to check back tomorrow where I'll try to be a little bit more concise. And again, forecast models change every day, so who's to say what tomorrow's forecast will show? Thanks for watching.